Twin sisters disappeared at a carnival in 1999, and the night they vanished, a scream tore through the humid air of Willow Creek, Alabama. Sharp and jagged, a sound that clawed at the edges of the carnival's frenetic pulse, a cry so raw it seemed to rip the fabric of the night itself. It wasn't the gleeful shriek of children spinning on the tilt-a-whirl or the carefree laughter from the Ferris wheel's glowing crest, spiraling high above the fairgrounds. This was primal, desperate, a sound heavy with terror, slicing through the suffocating August heat like a blade, a warning that went unheeded, swallowed by the cacophony of the Willow Creek Fair. The carnival was a living thing, its Calliope's relentless melody looping through the crowd, a siren song promising joy but laced with a sinister undertone that prickled the skin if you lingered on it too long, a whisper of wrongness that curled in the pit of your stomach. The air was thick with the cloying scent of cotton candy, the buttery warmth of popcorn, and the acrid tang of diesel, the lights pulsing in garish reds, blues, and yellows, casting fleeting shadows across faces lost in the thrill of the night. That scream lingered, a ghost in the chaos, unnoticed by all but the wind, a fleeting omen of the horror about to unfold, a sound that would haunt those who heard it for decades, a cry that carried the weight of two lives slipping away. Lila and Lena Harper, 12-year-old identical twins, were the beating heart of that night, their blonde hair shimmering like spun gold under the carnival's kaleidoscope, their green eyes alight with mischief, and a bond so deep it seemed to defy the laws of the world. They moved as one, their laughter a private language that shut out the chaos around them, their hands clasped tightly as they darted through the fairgrounds, weaving between stalls and rides, with a grace that made them seem almost ethereal, as if they belonged to the light itself. Their red sundresses flared like flames against the sea of strangers, catching the glow of the carnival's lights in a way that made them impossible to miss, or so their mother, Evelyn Harper, believed, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it bordered on pain, a love that felt like a physical thing, heavy and warm in her chest. She watched them from a bench near the ring toss, her eyes tracing their every move as they tossed rings, their heads tilted together, giggling over secrets only they shared, their joy a beacon in the crowded night, a light that seemed to hold the darkness at bay. Their father, Tom, was at the ticket booth, his broad shoulders hunched as he counted out crumpled bills for extra ride passes, his tired eyes softening with the promise of giving his girls a night to treasure, a night to etch into their memories before the summer slipped away. It was meant to be a night of magic, of sticky fingers and breathless laughter, a memory to hold against the ordinary days, a fleeting escape from the weight of the world. Instead, it became the night that shattered their lives, the night that carved a scar into Willow Creek's soul, a wound that would never heal, a moment that would define everything that followed. Evelyn's gaze drifted for a heartbeat, a vendor's shout, the glint of candied apples catching her eye, their glossy surfaces reflecting the carnival's frenetic glow like mirrors to a world just out of reach. The vendor's voice was loud, insistent, pulling her attention for a split second, a moment so brief it should have meant nothing. She turned back expecting to see the twins' red dresses, to hear their laughter rising above the din, their silhouettes framed against the spinning lights of the Ferris wheel, their joy a constant in the chaos. But they were gone. The crowd seemed to close around the space where they'd stood, swallowing them whole, the sea of strangers indifferent to the void left behind, their faces blurring into a wall of anonymity. Evelyn's breath caught, a cold fist gripping her chest, her voice sharp as she called their names. Lila, Lena, cutting through the noise like a blade, desperate and shrill, a mother's cry that carried a terror she couldn't yet name. No answer. Her heart pounded, a primal instinct screaming before her mind could catch up, her feet moving before she realized she was running, her hands pushing through the crowd, her eyes scanning every face, every shadow, the carnival's lights blurring into a dizzying smear, a kaleidoscope of colors that mocked her panic. The Calliope's tune warped into a mocking drone, its notes slowing, stretching as if time itself were taunting her, the laughter around her turning cruel, as if the carnival knew something she didn't, as if it had conspired to steal her daughter. Faces turned to her, some curious, some annoyed, but none held the answers she needed. None carried the spark of recognition she prayed for. Tom joined her, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a fear he couldn't name, his voice hoarse as he shouted their names into the night. The crowd parting around him like water around a stone, their pitying glances a knife in his heart. They searched until the ride stilled, the lights dimmed and the calliope's melody faded into an eerie silence, the carnival emptying like a stage after a play, leaving only the ghosts of that night, the echo of that scream ringing in their ear. The police arrived, their flashlights sweeping the empty fairgrounds, their radios crackling with urgency, their faces set in grim determination, but the twins were nowhere, as if the carnival had opened its maw and devoured them, leaving nothing but a void that swallowed hope. The days that followed were a descent into a waking nightmare, a hell where time stretched and contracted, each moment a fresh wound, each sunrise a reminder of what was lost. Willow Creek rallied, plastering flyers on every lamppost, telephone pole and shop window. The twins' school photos staring out with their bright green eyes, their smiles frozen in time, radiant and heartbreaking. The word missing stamped in bold, unforgiving letters that seemed to scream at the town, accusing it of failure, of turning away when it mattered most. Search parties combed the woods beyond the fairgrounds, their boots sinking into the damp earth, their voices hoarse from calling into the endless green, the trees swallowing their cries like secrets, their flashlights cutting through the dusk but finding nothing. Divers dragged the muddy river, their faces grim as they surfaced with nothing but silt and weeds, their eyes avoiding the volunteers who stood on the banks, clutching coffee cups and fading hope, their hands trembling with the weight of their own powerlessness. Neighbors knocked on every door within 10 miles, their questions met with shakes of heads, sympathetic glances and the occasional whispered rumor, a drifter seen lurking near the exit, his eyes too sharp, his hands too restless, his presence a shadow that didn't belong, a white van parked too long by the gate, its driver obscured by tinted windows, its engine idling like a predator waiting to strike, a clown whose painted smile lingered too close to the children, his laughter too forced, his eyes too cold, a figure who seemed to belong to the carnival's darker edges. The police chased every whisper, their notepads filling with dead ends, their faces growing harder with each passing day, their radios crackling with frustration, their questions met with shrugs and blank stare. No suspects, no evidence, no trace of Lila and Lane. It was as if they had stepped into the carnival's glow and dissolved into the night, leaving behind only that scream, a sound Evelyn heard in her dreams, over and over, until it became the rhythm of her heartbeat, a relentless reminder of the moment she turned away, the moment she failed them. Evelyn and Tom clung to hope, but it was a fragile thread fraying with each sunrise, each empty day, each moment that stretched into eternity. Evelyn stopped sleeping, her nights spent in the girls' bedroom, staring at their matching quilts, their stuffed animals lined up like mourners at a funeral, their button eyes watching her with silent accusation, as if they knew she'd failed. The room smelled of them still lavender shampoo, the faint sweetness of their favorite bubblegum, the ghost of their laughter trapped in the walls like a melody she couldn't quite hear, a song that broke her heart with every note. She touched their pillows, their hairbrushes, their diaries filled with loopy handwriting and doodled hearts, willing them to hold some piece of her daughters, some clue to bring them back, some fragment of their warmth to fill the void in her chest. She sat on their bed, alternating between Lila's and Lena's, whispering their names like a prayer, her fingers tracing the embroidered flowers on their quilts, the threads worn from years of her touch, each stitch a reminder of the nights she'd tucked them in, their giggles filling the dark, their whispers a secret world she'd never fully understood. She could still see them there, curled up together, their blonde hair spilling across the pillows, their hands clasped even in sleep, their bond a mystery she'd cherished but never fully grasped. Tom threw himself into work, then whiskey, his grief a silent corrosive force that ate away at his warmth, his laughter, the man he stopped talking, his eyes hollow, his hands shaking as he poured another glass, the bottle his only refuge from the pain, the guilt, the endless questions that gnawed at him. Why hadn't he stayed closer? Why hadn't he heard the scream? Why hadn't he held their hands, kept them safe? The town tried to hold them up, bringing casseroles and prayers, their faces soft with pity, their voices low with sympathy, but their support waned as weeks turned to months, then years, their lives moving forward while the Harpers remained frozen in that August night, trapped in a moment that refused to let go. The tragedy of the Harper twins became a cautionary tale, a story whispered to children to keep them close at fairs, a ghost story to chill the blood on quiet nights, a wound that Willow Creek tried to forget but couldn't erase, a shadow that lingered in the corners of the town's soul. For Evelyn, time didn't heal, it deepened the wound, carving it into her bones, her soul, her every breath, a pain that became as much a part of her as her own heart. She saw her daughters in every blonde girl, every burst of laughter, every flicker of light that reminded her of that night, the carnival's glow, a cruel mirror to her loss, a taunt that followed her everywhere. In her dreams she heard their voices, soft and pleading, "Mommy, where are you?" and woke with her hands clutching the empty air, her sobs the only sound in the silent house, her heart a battlefield of love and guilt, a war she could never win. She relived that night endlessly, her mind replaying every moment, searching for the mistake, the second she could have changed everything. If she hadn't looked away, if she'd held their hands, if she'd heard the scream for what it was, if she'd been faster, stronger. The guilt was a living thing, a weight that pressed against her chest, stealing her breath, her sleep, her life, a monster that whispered her failures in the quiet moments, its voice as relentless as the Calliope's tune. She stopped going to church, stopped seeing friends, her world shrinking to the house, to the girls' room, to the memories she couldn't let go, to the pain that defined her. Tom left a decade later, unable to bear the silence that filled the spaces where their daughters should have been, unable to look at Evelyn without seeing his own failure reflected in her eye. He moved to Birmingham, sending occasional letters filled with apologies and regrets, words scrawled in a trembling hand, but Evelyn couldn't read them, couldn't bear the reminder of the life they'd lost, the family they'd been, the love that had once held them together. She kept their room untouched, a shrine frozen in 1999, their quilts folded just so, their stuffed animals watching with unblinking eyes, their diaries gathering dust but never opened, as if reading their words would make their absence too real, too final, a truth she wasn't ready to face. The years piled on, each one heavier than the last, each one a stone added to the weight on Evelyn's heart, a burden she carried alone, a cross she bore in silence. Willow Creek changed. The fairgrounds were paved over for a strip mall, its neon signs a mockery of the carnival's fleeting magic, its concrete lot erasing the place where her daughters had vanished, as if the town could pave over its guilt, its failed. New stores replaced old ones, new families moved in, their children unaware of the tragedy that had shaped the town's soul, their laughter a painful echo of what Evelyn had lost, a sound that cut deeper than any knife. The town had mostly forgotten the Harper twins, their story buried under the march of progress, their names fading into the background noise of small-town lore, whispered only in hushed tones by those old enough to remember, those who still felt the weight of that night. Evelyn was trapped, her life a loop of that August evening, her heart tethered to the moment she turned away, the moment she failed them, the moment the carnival stole her daughters, and gave her nothing but silence in return. A silence that screamed louder than any sound. Then on a muggy Saturday morning in June 2025, the past reached out with a cold porcelain hand, a touch that shattered the fragile walls Evelyn had built around her grief, a touch that woke the town from its uneasy slumber. Mia Caldwell, a young mother pushing a stroller through the Willow Creek flea market, felt a shiver she couldn't explain, a prickle of unease that made her pause, her skin crawling under the weight of an unseen gaze, as if the air itself were watching her. The market was a chaotic sprawl of tables and tents, cluttered with the detritus of forgotten lives, cracked teacups, faded records, toys that had outlived their owners, their plastic smiles worn and weary, their eyes dulled by time. The doll sat between a pile of mismatched Tupperware and a box of dog-eared paperbacks,
its porcelain face smudged with dirt, its red dress faded but unmistakable, a cruel echo of the dresses Lila and Lena had worn that night, a red that burned in Mia's memory from the stories she'd grown up with. She didn't know why she picked it up. Maybe it was the way its glass eyes seemed to follow her, glinting with a cold, unyielding light, or the unnatural weight of it in her hands, heavier than any doll should be, as if it carried a secret too heavy for its fragile frame, a burden it refused to release. She turned it over, her fingers brushing a frayed pull string at its back, the kind you'd find on a talking toy from decades past, worn but intact, its threads unraveling like the edges of a memory. She tugged it, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't name, expecting a tinny nursery rhyme or a garbled phrase, something innocuous to match the market's mundane clutter, something to laugh off and set aside, something to dismiss as a relic of a simpler time. Instead, a voice came from the doll, clear and chilling, a child's voice frozen in a moment of terror, sharp and trembling with a fear that stopped Mia's heart, that stole the air from her lungs. "Mommy, where are you?" It said, the words cutting through the market's hum like a blade, raw and desperate, a plea from a nightmare that had no end. She froze, her pulse hammering in her ears, the market's noise fading to a dull roar, the world narrowing to the doll in her hands, its glass eyes staring up at her, unblinking, accusing, alive with a pain that wasn't hers but felt like it could be. She pulled the string again, her hands shaking, her breath hitching, and the voice repeated, "Mommy, where are you?" The same trembling fear, the same desperate plea, as if the doll were alive, trapped, crying out for rescue, its voice a bridge to a moment long gone but never forgotten. Mia dropped it, the porcelain clattering against the table, a sharp sound that drew eyes but no answers, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps, her hands trembling as she backed away, her heart racing with a fear she couldn't name but felt in her bones. She called her husband, David, who ran over, his face paling as he heard the voice, his hands steadying her as she trembled, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored his own. They knew the story of the Harper twins. Every child in Willow Creek grew up with it, a warning woven into bedtime stories, a shadow that lingered in the town's collective memory, a tale of two girls who vanished into the night and never came back, a mystery that had become part of the town's DNA. This was no coincidence, no carnival trinket forgotten in a box, no prank to be dismissed with a laugh. They took the doll to the police, their steps hurried, their voices low as they explained what they'd found, their hands clasped tightly as if to anchor themselves against the horror unfolding before them, against the weight of a truth they weren't ready to face. The officer at the desk, a young man who hadn't been born in 1999, dismissed it as a prank, a relic from some long-forgotten carnival game, his eyes skeptical, his tone impatient, his fingers drumming on the counter as if he had better things to do. But Mia insisted, her voice shaking as she recounted the legend, her hands clutching David's arm for support, her words tumbling over each other in her urgency to be heard, to make him understand that this was no ordinary toy, no harmless relic. Sergeant Daniel, a grizzled officer, who'd been a rookie that fateful summer, overheard them, his eyes narrowing as he took the doll, his fingers brushing its cold porcelain, a prickle of unease stirring a memory from that long-ago night, a night he'd never shaken, a night that had carved itself into his soul. He held the doll, its weight heavy in his hands, its glass eyes seeming to watch him, to know him, and he felt a chill he couldn't explain, a sense that the past was reaching out, demanding to be heard, refusing to stay buried. He sent it to the lab, more to appease Mia than out of hope, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something that had been waiting in the shadows, biding its time, ready to break free, a truth that had been silent for too long. When the lab results came back, the station fell silent, the air heavy with disbelief, as if the room itself held its breath, the weight of the discovery pressing against every officer present, a truth too heavy to bear. The voice was Lena Harper, matched to an old home video the family had provided in 1999, a grainy tape of the twins singing happy birthday at their 10th birthday party, their voices bright and clear, their laughter filling the frame, a moment of joy frozen in time, A moment that should have been untouchable. The recording was degraded but unmistakable. A snapshot of a moment no one could explain. A voice trapped in a doll that shouldn't exist. A plea from a night that refused to let go. A cry that carried 25 years of pain. The doll was handmade, not mass-produced. Its porcelain face crafted with a care that felt almost obsessive. Its red dress sewn with stitches so precise they spoke of devotion, or madness. A creation that felt alive with intent. It had no tags, no marks to trace its maker. Its mechanism, a crude blend of a voice recorder and pull string. Technology from the late 90s, cobbled together with unsettling precision, as if someone had poured their soul into its creation. A labor of love or a labor of cruelty, a taunt or a confession. The discovery reignited the case, and the news spread through Willow Creek like a spark in dry grass, rekindling old fears, stirring new questions, awakening a town that had tried to forget, that had tried to bury its guilt under years of silence. How had the doll ended up at the flea market, tucked among the cast-offs of strangers, unnoticed until now? Who had made it and why? And why, after 25 years, was Lena's voice calling out? A ghost trapped in porcelain, pleading for her mother in a voice that broke hearts, that tore open wounds, that demanded answers no one. Evelyn was washing dishes when Sergeant Daniels called, the phone's ring jarring her from a daze, the soapy water slipping through her fingers like the years she'd lost, like the moments she'd failed to hold on to. The plate she held shattered in the sink, the sound echoing in the quiet kitchen, a sharp crack that mirrored the fracture in her heart, a sound that felt like the world breaking apart all over again. His words sank in, each one a needle piercing her soul, a truth she wasn't ready to face but couldn't escape, a call from the past that demanded her presence. She drove to the station, her hands trembling on the wheel, her mind a storm of hope and dread, the past and present colliding in a way that made her chest ache, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps, her heart pounding with a fear and a longing she couldn't separate. In the evidence room, the doll lay on a sterile table, its red dress a punch to her heart, a cruel echo of that night, its glass eyes staring through her, cold and unyielding, like a mirror to her guilt, her failure, her loss. She reached for it, her fingers shaking, desperate to hold this piece of her daughter, to feel some connection to Lena, to cling to this fragment of her life. But Daniel stopped her, his voice gentle but firm, explaining it was evidence, untouchable for now, a relic of a crime not yet solved, a piece of a puzzle not yet complete. She didn't need to touch it. She pulled the string, her breath held, her heart pounding, her body trembling with the weight of 25 years, and Lena's voice filled the room. "Mommy, where are you?" And Evelyn's knees buckled, her sobs echoing in the cold fluorescent space, raw and guttural, a sound that carried a quarter-century of grief, of guilt, of a love that had nowhere to go, a mother's pain laid bare, a wound that bled anew with each trembling word from the doll's hidden speaker. It was her daughter's voice, a piece of Lena returned after all these years, but it brought no comfort, only a fresh wave of pain, sharp and unrelenting, tearing open the scar she'd carried since that night, a scar that had never healed, that had only grown deeper with time.
The doll unleashed a storm in Willow Creek, a tempest of emotions that swept through the town like a flood, stirring memories long buried, awakening fears that had never truly slept, a reminder that some wounds never heal, that some truths refuse to stay silent. For Evelyn, it was a cruel paradox, hope that her daughters might still be alive, a fragile spark that flickered in the darkness of her heart, and horror that their voices were trapped in a toy, a taunt from someone who knew the truth, someone who wanted her to suffer, to relive that night again and again, to feel the weight of her failure with every breath. For the town, it was a ghost story made real, a puzzle that demanded answers, a wound reopened in a community that had tried to move on, to bury the pain of that summer night, under layers of time and denial. Detective Sarah Nguyen took the case, a sharp-eyed outsider who'd moved to Willow Creek a decade earlier, her analytical mind unburdened by the town's history but not immune to the doll's eerie weight. its voice a shiver that lingered in her bones. A whisper of something beyond logic, something that defied her carefully constructed world of facts and evidence. She approached it with clinical precision, her notebook filled with neat, methodical notes, her questions sharp and relentless. But even she felt a chill when she heard Lena's voice, a prickle of unease that refused to fade, a sense that she was stepping into a darkness deeper than she'd ever known. She started at the flea market, interviewing vendors, tracing the doll's path through a maze of second-hand goods, her voice calm but her eyes searching, missing nothing, her heart pounding with a need to find answers, to give Evelyn the closure she'd been denied for so long, to bring light to a mystery that had cast a shadow over Willow Creek for a generation. The discovery of the second doll, with Lila Harper's voice pleading, "Lena, don't leave me," had plunged Willow Creek into a deeper state of unease, as if the town itself were holding its breath, waiting for the next piece of the nightmare to surface. The summer of 2025 was unrelenting, the air thick with humidity and the weight of secrets, the kind that clung to the skin and whispered in the quiet moments. For Detective Sarah Nguyen, the case had become a labyrinth, each turn revealing new shadows, each clue a taunt from a truth that refused to be caught. The dolls, with their porcelain faces and faded dresses, were no longer just evidence. They were relics of a tragedy that pulsed with life, their voices a haunting chorus that echoed through the years, demanding answers, refusing to be silent. For Evelyn Harper, they were both a lifeline and a torment, fragments of her daughters that kept her tethered to a hope she couldn't let go, even as it tore her apart. The town, once eager to forget the Harper twins, now found itself gripped by the mystery, its streets buzzing with whispers, its people haunted by the possibility that the truth was closer than they dared to believe. Sarah's office was a war zone of files and photographs, the walls papered with maps, timelines, and the sketch of the man with the scarred hand, his vague features a constant taunt. The second doll had shifted the case, its blue dress and Lila's voice a confirmation that the twins' fate was tied to someone who'd planned, who'd watched, who'd crafted these eerie effigies with a purpose that chilled her to the bone. She couldn't shake the feeling that the dolls were a message, a game played by a mind that reveled in control, in the power to pull the strings of those left behind. The anonymous letter, "The other doll is still out there," had been a spark, igniting a new wave of leads, most of them dead ends, but each one a reminder that the case was alive, that someone out there knew the truth, was watching. Sarah's nights were sleepless, her dreams filled with the twins' voices, their pleas blending with the Calliope's tune, a melody that seemed to follow her everywhere. A ghost of that August night. Her next lead came from an unexpected source, a retired Carnival worker named Amos Reed, who'd seen the news and contacted the station, his voice rough with age but steady with conviction. Amos had worked the Willow Creek Fair in 1999, manning the carousel, and remembered Victor Gaines, the maintenance worker whose name kept surfacing like a specter. He was always tinkering, Amos said, his words slow, deliberate, as if unearthing a memory he'd buried deep. Had a knack for fixing things, but he'd take stuff apart just to see how it worked. Radios, toys, anything with wires, kept to himself, but you'd catch him watching the kids, especially those twins, never smiled, just watched. Amos paused, his breath heavy over the line. One night, I saw him near the exit, carrying a big duffel bag, moving quick, like he didn't want to be seen. Same night those girls went missing. Sarah's pulse quickened, the image of Victor with the bag aligning with Marjorie Tate's memory of the scarred man, the pieces of the puzzle inching closer together. Amos added one more detail, a spark in the dark. Victor had a hideout, a small shed behind the Carnival storage tents, where he'd work on his projects, a place no one else went, a secret space that might hold answers. Sarah organized a search of the old fairgrounds, now a strip mall, but the woods behind it remained untouched, a tangled wilderness where the past seemed to linger. The shed was still there, half collapsed, its wood rotted, its roof sagging under years of neglect, but intact enough to search. The team moved carefully, their flashlights cutting through the dusk, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine. the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. Sarah felt a prickle of unease, as if the shed were watching them, its dark windows like eyes, guarding secrets it wasn't ready to share. Inside they found remnants of Victor's work, rusted tools, coils of wire, a broken voice recorder, and tucked in a corner, a scrap of red fabric, faded but unmistakable, a match to the twins' dress. Sarah's heart pounded, her hands trembling, as she bagged the evidence, the fabric a tangible link to that night, a piece of the twins returned after all these years. The lab later confirmed traces of soil matching the woods, and faint fibers that could have come from a child's clothing, but no DNA, no definitive proof, only another clue that deepened the mystery, another thread in a tapestry that refused to come into focus. Evelyn was at the station when Sarah returned, her presence a constant now, her frail frame hunched in a chair, her eyes fixed on the evidence room door, as if she could will the dolls to speak, to tell her where her daughters were. The news of the fabric hit her like a physical blow, her hands shaking as she touched the evidence bag, her fingers tracing the red threads through the plastic, her sobs quiet but wrenching, a sound that carried the weight of a lifetime of law. "It's theirs," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know it's theirs." Sarah wanted to comfort her, to offer some promise of answers, but the words felt hollow, her own frustration a heavy weight in her chest. Evelyn's obsession had grown, her life narrowing to the dolls, to the hope that they were a sign, a message that her girls were still out there waiting for her. She'd taken to sitting in the girls' room for hours, the dolls on the bed beside her, pulling their strings, until the mechanisms groaned, their voices fading but never silent, a ritual that kept her daughters close, even as it consumed her. "They're trying to tell me something," she'd say, her eyes wild with a desperate hope. "They're calling me." Sarah saw the toll it was taking, the way Evelyn's hands trembled, her face gaunt, her life slipping away under the weight of a grief that refused to relent, a love that burned too bright to fade. The case took a new turn when a third tip came in, this one from a pawn shop owner in Louisiana, who'd seen the news and recognized the description of the dolls. He claimed a man had sold him a similar doll years ago, its dress green, its voice too degraded to make out, but its pull-string mechanism identical, its porcelain face hauntingly familiar. The man had been nervous, his hands scarred, his eyes darting, and he'd left quickly, refusing to give a name. The doll was long gone, sold to an unknown buyer, but the owner remembered one detail. The man had mentioned a collection, a word that sent a chill down Sarah's spine, a hint of something larger, something deliberate. She tracked the pawn shop's records, but they were incomplete, the trail fading into the ether, another ghost in a case full of them. The idea of a collection gnawed at her, the possibility that there were more dolls, more voices, more pieces of the twins scattered across the South, a puzzle designed to torment, to keep the truth just out of reach. Sarah's next move was to dig deeper into Victor Gaines's past, her team combing through old employment records, arrest reports, and anything that might trace his movements after. They found a pattern, a string of short-term jobs at carnivals and fairs across Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi, always leaving abruptly, always under a cloud of suspicion. In 2003 he'd been questioned in a missing child case in Biloxi, a girl who'd vanished from a fairground, her case unsolved, her face hauntingly similar to the No charges were filed, but the connection was enough to make Sarah's stomach turn, a pattern emerging that suggested Victor wasn't just a suspect, but a predator, a man who'd honed his craft over years, who'd learned to slip through the cracks. She found a photograph from a 2005 carnival in Mobile. Victor, in the background, his face partially obscured, but the scar on his hand unmistakable, a jagged line that seemed to pulse with intent, a mark of a man who'd left his signature on the world in ways no one had seen. The breakthrough came in early September 2025 when a hiker in the woods near Mobile stumbled across a hidden campsite, abandoned, but recent, its contents a chilling echo of the case. The site was tucked deep in the forest, far from any trail, its entrance concealed by overgrown vines, a place that felt like a secret kept from the world. Inside a makeshift shelter, the police found carnival relics, rusted gears, faded posters, a carousel horse head with chipped paint, and a box containing fragments of porcelain, bits of fabric in red, blue and green, and a voice recorder with a single garbled message.
Don't leave me. Sarah's heart stopped. The words a match to Lila's plea. The recorder a twin to the ones in the dolls. The campsite a glimpse into Victor's world. A place where he'd crafted his horrors. Where he'd kept the twins' voices alive in porcelain prison. The site yielded no DNA, no fingerprints, but it confirmed Victor as their prime suspect. A man who'd turned his obsession into a twisted art, who'd left a trail of clues for reasons no one could fathom. Sarah returned to Ethan, Clara Henshaw's nephew, who'd worked with Victor in 1999, her questions sharper now, her patience worn thin. She found him at a gas station outside Mobile, his hands shaking as he pumped gas, his eyes darting as if he expected Victor to appear from the shadows. Under pressure, Ethan cracked, his voice trembling as he admitted he'd known more than he'd let on. Victor was always talking about the twins, he said, his words spilling out like a confession. Said they were special, like they belonged to the carnival, like they were meant to stay with it. He'd record them, their laughter, their voices. Said it was for a project. I thought he was just weird. Not this. Ethan swore he'd left the carnival before the twins vanished, but he'd seen Victor with the duffel bag that night, his scar glinting under the lights, his face set in a way that scared him. I didn't say anything, Ethan whispered, his eyes wet with guilt. I should have, but I was scared. Sarah left him there, her heart heavy with the weight of another missed chance, another moment where the truth had slipped away, another life touched by Victor's darkness. The case was closing in, but Victor remained a ghost, his trail cold, his whereabouts unknown. Sarah organized a multi-state alert, his description and sketch sent to every police department in the South, her team chasing every sighting, every rumor. In October, a lead came from a small town in Arkansas, where a man matching Victor's description had been seen at a thrift store, selling a doll with a yellow dress, its voice too faint to hear, but its pull-string mechanism, a chilling echo of the other. Sarah drove through the night, her hands gripping the wheel, her heart pounding with the hope that this was it, the moment she'd find him, the moment she'd bring answers to Evelyn. The thrift store was a cluttered mess, its shelves groaning with the remnants of forgotten lives, but the doll was gone, bought by a collector who'd left no contact information, another dead end in a case that seemed to thrive on. The shop owner described the man's scarred hand, nervous eyes, a limp that slowed his steps, and Sarah felt the truth slipping through her fingers, a shadow just out of reach, a man who'd learned to vanish. Evelyn's health was failing, the weight of the dolls, the shoe, the fabric, and the photograph too much for her fragile heart. She spent her days in the girls' room, the dolls beside her, their voices silent now, the mechanisms worn out, but she didn't need to pull the strings to hear them, their pleas a constant in her mind, a loop of love and loss that kept her alive, even as it killed her. Sarah visited her often, bringing updates however small, her presence a quiet promise that she wouldn't give up. One evening, as the sun set over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Evelyn took Sarah's hand, her grip weak but fierce, her eyes bright with a clarity that hadn't been there before. They're not gone, she said, her voice steady. Not really, I feel them, Sarah. They're waiting for me, but they don't want me to hurt anymore. Sarah nodded, her throat tight, her heart aching with the weight of Evelyn's love, a love that had survived 25 years of pain, a love that refused to break. In November 2025, a final lead came from a hospice worker in Georgia, who'd cared for a dying man named Victor Gaines. He'd been admitted under an alias, his body ravaged by cancer, his scars still visible, his eyes haunted by secrets he'd carried to the end. The worker said he'd spoken of the twins in his final days, his words fragmented, feverish, but filled with regret. I didn't mean to take them, he'd whispered. I just wanted them to stay, to keep their... He'd mentioned a box, hidden in a storage unit in Mobile, a place where he'd kept the rest of them, a phrase that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Victor died before she could reach him, his secret slipping away with his last breath. But the storage unit was real, its contents a final chapter in the nightmare. Sarah and her team opened the unit, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay, the space a shrine to Victor's obsession. Inside they found more carnival relics, rusted gears, faded posters, a carousel horse with a chipped ear, and a box containing 3 more dolls, their dresses yellow, green, and purple, their porcelain faces cracked but intact, their pull strings silent, their voices lost to time. There were no recordings, no new voices, but the dolls were enough, a confirmation of Victor's collection, a testament to his twisted need to capture the twins' light, to keep them with him in porcelain and wire. They found a notebook, its pages filled with Victor's scrawl, fragments of a mind unhinged, sketches of the twins, notes about their laughter, their bond, a plan to keep them forever. The final entry was dated August 1999, a single line, "They're safe now with the Carnival, where they belong." Sarah read it, her hands trembling, her heart heavy with the weight of a truth that was both an answer and a wound, a confirmation that the twins were gone, their light extinguished by a man who'd seen their joy and wanted it for himself. The truth was devastating, but it wasn't complete. There were no bodies, no definitive proof of what had happened after Victor took them, only the dolls and his words, a confession that raised as many questions as it answered. Sarah brought the notebook to Evelyn, sitting with her in the girls' room, the dolls lined up on the bed, their glass eyes watching, their presence a silent witness to a mother's pain. Evelyn read the final entry, her hands shaking, her sobs quiet but deep, a sound that carried the weight of a lifetime of love, of loss, of a hope that had kept her alive. "They're not with him," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "They're with me always." She touched the dolls, her fingers gentle, as if they were her daughters, as if they could feel her love, her promise to never let them go. Evelyn's health declined rapidly after that, her body giving out under the weight of her grief, her heart too tired to carry on. In December 2025 she passed away in her sleep, found in the girls' room, the dolls clutched to her chest, a faint smile on her lips, as if she'd finally found them, as if she'd followed their voices to a place where they could be together. Sarah was there when they found her, her own tears falling as she saw the peace on Evelyn's face, a peace she hadn't seen in all the months she'd known her, a peace that felt like a gift, a final act of love from daughters to mother. The town mourned her, their faces soft with pity, their hearts heavy with the weight of a tragedy that had defined them, a story that had no happy ending but had left its mark on every soul in Willow Creek. Sarah closed the case, but it never felt finished, the truth a partial light in a darkness that remained. The dolls were locked away in evidence, their voices silent, their secrets kept, a reminder of a night that had changed everything. Victor's notebook offered a glimpse into his mind, but not the full story, not the where or the how, only the why, a twisted need to capture something beautiful, to hold it forever, even if it meant destroying it. Sarah kept searching, chasing leads that grew fainter with each passing year, her nights haunted by the twins' faces, their laughter a memory she couldn't let go, a promise she'd made to Evelyn to never stop looking. Willow Creek carried on, its streets busier, its people younger, but the carnival's shadow never lifted, a darkness that clung to the town like damp earth. The strip mall stood where the fairgrounds once glowed, but on quiet nights some swore they heard the coyote's tune, faint and mournful, drifting through the air, a ghost of that summer night in. The twins' story became a legend, a tale of love and loss, of a mother's heart that refused to break, of a town that carried its guilt like a second skin. Sarah retired years later, but she kept the twins' photo on her desk, their smiles a reminder of why she'd fought, why she'd never given up, even when the answers were out of reach. In the spring of 2026, a memorial was built in Willow Creek, a small garden near the woods where the shoe was found, a place of quiet beauty, where the town could remember Lila and Lena, where their light could live on. The garden was filled with flowers, red and blue like their dresses, and a plaque with their names, their faces etched in bronze, their smiles eternal. At the dedication, the town gathered, their faces wet with tears, their hands clasped in silent prayer, their hearts heavy but full. Sarah spoke, her voice breaking as she told their story, not just of their loss but of their joy, their bond, the love that had kept Evelyn alive, that had kept them all searching. "They're not gone," she said, echoing Evelyn's words. "They're with us, in every laugh, every moment of love, every time we hold someone close." The crowd nodded, their sobs a quiet chorus, their love a light that burned through the darkness, a promise to never forget. As the ceremony ended, a breeze swept through the garden carrying the faint scent of cotton candy, a whisper of that long-ago night, and for a moment, some swore they heard laughter, soft and bright, the sound of two girls running through a carnival, their hands clasped, their hearts free. Sarah felt it, her eyes closing as she listened, her heart full, her tears falling for Evelyn, for Lila, for Lila, for love that had survived it all. The twins were gone, but their light remained, a beacon in the darkness, a reminder that some bonds are stronger than time, stronger than loss, stronger than the shadows that try to claim them. In that garden, under a sky painted with the colors of memory, Willow Creek found peace, not in answers, but in love, in the eternal echo of two girls who'd never truly left, whose voices still called, not in pain, but in joy, forever home in the hearts of those who loved.